Hi everybody, this is Carly from Unzipped. Hope you're well. In this short video, I'm going to talk through how to help you to demand forecast your fashion sales. Therefore, how much stock you need to produce to demand to help you to minimize your waste. So I'm a huge fan of how to be sustainable, and sustainable being more than just fabric and the production methods, but how to really focus on running a lean business model. So first, I'll start at the beginning of demand forecasting. So the first major thing is to actually separate it into indirect and direct sales channels. So indirect being wholesale, because if you're looking at your sales predictions for wholesale, that would actually be driven by the platform, by the person that's buying it from you. Therefore, you really should just be focusing on your direct, so your sales channels, because that's something that you need to predict. So pretty much separate the two. So then the first section is looking at product life cycles. So you will be intentionally designing product and you will know whether or not it's slow fashion or whether or not it's fast fashion. Therefore, you'll have a prediction over how many weeks you're planning to sell it for and intend to sell out of it by. So for example, fast fashion can be anything from like 4 to 6 weeks. And obviously slow fashion can be a whole season or more. So have that in mind when you're considering this. And this will help you to obviously multiply what you're intending to sell. So one major starting point, obviously, if you haven't launched a fashion brand before, you won't have any similar products to compare to. But if you have, then you can actually find similar products. So i.e. it could be an A-line skirt that's got no sleeves, or it could be a leather boot or something. So find similar products, look at the sales data, and that will help to suggest how many units you sold during what weeks, where were the peak sales, and that can help you to forecast. So pretty much if you don't have that data, let me help you to start to build your demand forecast. So one of the first things is to actually just start to research, to look at the market and the trends. So the first one is, what were the past trends and what are the current trends in the fashion world? So obviously don't be that generic. Look at your product category, what's trending within that, and are your products on trend or not? Therefore, are they in demand? How popular are they? So also with this, consider things that are up and coming. So for example, the Olympics, and will this have an effect on the demand for sports and sportswear? And that could be something that you consider. So then start to look at researching your consumer behavior. So obviously lots has changed. Is it still that the trend for the consumer is that they want to shop online, they're valuing speed of delivery, they're searching for sustainable product, whatever their needs are, their behavior at the moment of where they're shopping, what they want, make sure your product is either speaking to that, or that will give you an indication of, again, how popular your product will be if you are or aren't answering to those behaviors. So another one is you can use social media to actually help you to look at your demand forecasting. So look at hashtags, how are they trending? And again, specifically for your product category, track this over, a few days, few weeks, few months, and see if it's increasing or decreasing. Other ways is to test engagement on posts. So is the color orange more popular, or is leopard print more popular than zebra? And actually see the engagement on trends, which will link back to your product. Other ways to check demand is to actually use keyword tools. So there's a really popular one which will look at YouTube and Amazon, and it will help you to see if your keyword is trending well. So I'll have the link on the screen for that. So definitely check the popularity of your product and how that's trended over the last few months to give you, again, an indication of how in demand it is. Also, you really need to consider your market. So what's happening in the market that you're going to be launching in? So consider the politics, consider economics, the environment, and how could this affect the sales of your products? So definitely be aware of that. So kind of once you've got that bigger picture research, now you need to kind of get into the nitty gritty. So the best way is to actually break down your products. So have them individually listed. looking at their retail prices, looking at the fashionability of them, and then really start to look at when you intend to launch it, what its product life cycle is, and what's going to happen within, say, that 8-week selling period. So, for example, what's your pricing and what's your promotional activity going to be in those 8 weeks? Are there events like Black Friday or Christmas or Mother's Day? So start to track that into a calendar and start to then think of weekly sales and demands of your product based on those specific criterias. Also, dependent on your product, you could be weather affected. Your sales could be affected by the weather, rather. So, for example, is it going to be Christmas? Is it going to be really cold in wherever you live? Or is it going to be summer? So, this will have an effect on the demand and the sales of your product. So, consider the weather in the months that you intend to sell it in. And one other tip outside of that is to don't just plan for how many you think you're going to sell. You're best to have that little bit extra. So actually produce that little bit more than demand. Because one of the worst things is to have out of stock. You don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure that there's enough for the demand, so slightly over. One other factor again is to actually research into the size curve of your product category. So be aware of, you've got to produce for everything I've already talked about, but make sure you've got the size curve, which kind of does very much so relate to what I just said about you don't want out of stock product. So there are ways that you can actually demand forecast your product. So it really is all about what research can you find, what trends, etc., how in demand is your product, and just using some real kind of common strategies to help you to actually build your own forecast. So there is no mathematical equation, unfortunately. Every single brand will have different factors. So you really just need to get your head into what's happening for your market, your product category, and just start to forecast. One final tip is within demand forecasting. So obviously, if you're producing closer to home, you're going to be a lot quicker on producing, therefore delivering the product to the market in time when it's needed. If, say, you're based in the UK and you produce in China, you're not going to be as quick. So when you're forecasting and thinking about this, also be aware of where your manufacturing is and therefore how quickly your lead time is, therefore how quickly you can actually react to the demand of your product. Because again, if it's closer to home and you could say do it in weeks as opposed to months, then you could also consider that as part of your strategy. I'll actually produce less because I know I can repeat it really quickly. So I hope that helps you to demand forecast the sales and the amount of stock that you need for your fashion brand. If you have any other questions, please leave them below. Happily, please subscribe to this channel. I do post multiple different topics, and feel free to ask me for anything else, any specific area that you'd like me to cover when it comes to the sale and the promotion of your fashion brand. Thanks so much for listening. Bye, everyone.